Shalom Mishpachim, welcome to His Narrow Bridge. Our time together today is meant to immerse ourselves in the Word of Yahweh. It is meant to be a personal time of connection to the Word for each of us. I will read each word as translated in English in an interlinear Hebrew Bible. These shows are pre-recorded, so I will be in chat when they air. Feel free to use the chat to post anything that comes to your mind as we read the word. We will begin with prayer, followed by time for each of us to say our own personal prayers. Our beloved friend Alan Horvath taught us, make Elohim number one on a list of one. We pray in the name of Elohim, which includes Yahweh, Yeshua, and the Ruach HaKodesh. Thank you, Elohim, for our lives and all you provide. We ask for a hedge of protection around our mishpacha as we pray and study. We love you dearly. We are your children. We come to you with questions as we seek our personal relationships with you. Please help us learn. If any darkness enters our time together, we ask you now to rebuke it. We will now listen to your word as we immerse ourselves in it and let it speak to us.
Acts chapter 15. Now men came down from Yehud, teaching the brothers that unless you are circumcised in the manner of Torah, you are not able to live. Footnote 139, this is the teaching of those who later became known as the Ebionites or Messianic Pharisees. See footnote on Titus 3:9. Also note that the life being mentioned by these proto-Ebionites is in fact eternal life, hence a very serious allegation. Verse 2, and there was a great commotion and debate between them and Paul and Barnabas, and it happened with them on account of this debate that Paul and Barnabas and the others with them went up to the Shlichim and the elders who were in Jerusalem. The congregation conducted and sent them, and they journeyed in all Phoenicia and also Samaria, as they related about the reconciliation of the Gentiles. And they caused great joy to all the brothers. And when they came to Jerusalem, they were received by the congregation and by the shlichim and by the elders. And they narrated to them everything that Elohim did among them. Verse 5, now some stood up, those who believed from the teaching of the Pharisees, and they said that it is necessary for you to circumcise them, and you should command them to guard the Torah of Moshe. Footnote 140, guard in this case refers to putting up of fences, Pirkei Avot 1:1, around Torah, not simply obeying the written word. Part of this fence, known as religious halacha, minchagim, or tradition, requires a person to be circumcised before learning about having a relationship with Yahweh and why Torah must be applied to our lives. This tradition overturns the peshat, plain meaning of many Torah requirements. The context is clearly shown earlier in the passage where it reads, those who believed from the teachings of the Pharisees as opposed to the teachings of Torah. In other cases, however, guarding is considered a noble endeavor, provided it neither contradicts, adds, nor takes away from Torah in favor of man-made traditions. Verse 6, the shlichim and elders gathered together to look into this matter. And after a great debate occurred, Shimon arose and said to them, Men, brothers, you know that from prior days, from my mouth, mine, Elohim chose that the Gentiles would hear the words of the good news and they would believe. And Elohim, who knows what is in the hearts, testified concerning them and gave to them the Ruach HaKodesh as he did to us. And he differentiates nothing between them and us because he cleansed their hearts by faith. And now, why do you test Elohim so as to place a yoke upon the neck of the disciples, that which not even our forefathers nor us were able to carry? Footnote 141. This yoke is clearly referring to the oral law, not the written Torah of Moshe. The oral Torah, Talmud, has put many additional burdens on Jews and greatly limited the ability of Gentiles to join with Israel. See Judaizers in Appendix. Verse 11, but by the grace of our Master Yeshua the Mashiach, we believe that we are saved as they. And all the crowd became quiet, and they were listening to Paul and to Barnabas as they were relating everything that Elohim did by their hands, miracles and wonders among the Gentiles. And after they became quiet, Yaakov arose and said, Men, brothers, listen to me. Shimon related to you how Elohim began to choose from the Gentiles a people for his name. And to this end, the words of the prophets are fulfilled, as it is written, that after these things I will return and raise up the tabernacle of David, that which fell, and I will build the thing that fell off from it, and I will raise it up, so that the remainder of mankind and all the Gentiles will seek Yahweh, those who my name is called over them, said Master Yahweh, who made all these things. The works of Elohim are known from eternity. Because of this, I say that you should not be oppressors to them from the Gentiles who are turning to Elohim, but we will send word to them that they should abstain from uncleanness of sacrifices to idols, and from adultery, and from things that are strangled, and from blood. Footnote 142. That which is sacrificed unto other gods, according to Yahweh's word in Devarim, Deuteronomy 32:17, is sacrificed unto devils. Vayikra, Leviticus 17:12 through 16, commands that Jew and Ger, foreigner, not eat blood or any animals that die of themselves. The prohibition against fornication is wide spectrum against all manner of physical perversion and spiritual whoredom. These Torah directives are eternally binding on all who follow Yeshua Mashiach and who seek the Malchut, kingdom of Elohim. Also, Kaburis has an isolated kof here between the words we and send. Deuteronomy 32, verse 17, they sacrificed to demons or Shaddayim, and to Elohim not did they know, to new Hashadaim, new arrivals, not that did fear your fathers. Leviticus 17, verse 12. Upon thus I said to the sons of Israel, every soul among you not shall eat blood, shall any stranger who dwells among you not eat blood. And whatever man of the sons of Israel or of the strangers who dwell among you who hunts and catches any animal or bird that may be eaten, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with dust. For the life of all flesh, its blood sustains its life. It is, therefore, I said to the sons of Israel, the blood of any flesh not you shall eat. For the life of all flesh, its blood, he whoever eats it shall be cut off. And every person who eats what died naturally or what was torn by beasts, of whether he is a native of your own country or a stranger, and he shall both wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening, and he shall be clean. But if not, he does wash them or his body bathe, then he shall bear his guilt. Verse 21. For from ancient generations in all cities, Moshe had preachers in the synagogues that on every Shabbat they read him. Footnote 143, a very clear fulfillment of Isaiah 56, 1 through 9. Gentile converts are observing Shabbat and learning Torah as one body along with Jews. Shortly thereafter, Marcion, whom Polycarp referred to as the firstborn of the devil, built the first all-Gentile church to promote Christo-paganism. Marcion held his services on Sunday, which blended with Zeus, the sun god culture, and projected a hybrid Jesus identity in opposition to the Jewish Mashiach. The modern theologies of Jesus Christos are based more on Hellenism than on original fundamental Hebraic values. Marcion coined the words Old New Testament and did his very best to warn Gentiles away from Torah and the God of the Old Testament. Marcion invented theologies known as replacement, dispensational, supersessionism, etc., which are very popular among Christianity today. See Yeshua to Zeus in appendix. Verse 22. Then the shlichim and the elders with all the congregants chose men from among them and sent them to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas, and also Yehuda, who is called Bar-Shaba, and Sheila, and men leaders who were among them, among the brothers. And they wrote an epistle by their hands thus: the shlichim and the elders and the brothers, to those who are in Antioch and in Syria and in Cilicia, brothers who are from the Gentiles, peace. We have heard that some men from us went out and confused you with words and have agitated your souls, saying that you should be circumcised and guard the religious customs, something that we did not command them. Footnote 144, the word namusa generally means Torah, but by context of usage may also mean custom. When namusa stands alone in a sentence, it usually means Torah. Jeremiah 9 specifically says that circumcision in the flesh, because it is a local custom in Edom, Moab, Egypt, does not satisfy covenantal obligation with Yahweh. Moreover, circumcision in the flesh alone profits nothing. Unless a person plans to live an upright life to establish his circumcision, it is an effort in futility. Abraham was circumcised at age 99 after receiving the commandment directly from Yahweh. Therefore, each adult also must first be called and agree to enter into covenant with Yahweh. The shlichim apostles did not require or demand circumcision for new converts without first the study, faith, context, and intent of the heart. To be circumcised before having faith in Yahweh was contrary to the halacha, a way to walk of Yeshua and the Netzarim, but not contrary to the oral law and customs of the Pharisees. New converts to Yeshua from the sect of the Pharisees were attempting to bring their customs into the body of Mashiach, which was and is unacceptable. while Torah commanded that all infants be circumcised at 8 days of age, it also requires adult men coming into the faith to become circumcised themselves first, as was done with Abraham at the ripe old age of 99. The point was, though, that the Gentiles from the beginning were expected to progressively grow and apply Torah more thoroughly as time went on, not simply stop at a few basic commandments. Verse 25, because of this, we deliberated all of us after we gathered together, and we chose men and sent them to you with our beloved Paul and Barnabas, men who have committed their souls for the sake of the name of our Master Yeshua the Mashiach. And we sent Yehuda and Sheila with them, who by their words they will tell you these things. For there was a determination upon the Ruach HaKodesh and also upon us that a greater burden should not be placed upon you except those things that are necessary, that you should stay away from that which is sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from a strangled thing, and from fornication, that as you keep your souls from these things, you will be well. Be true in our Master Yeshua. Footnote 145, Exodus 24, Leviticus 17:7, 19:4, and 26:1, Deuteronomy 4:16 through 25. Footnote 146 is Leviticus 7:26 through 27, Leviticus 17:13 through 14, Deuteronomy 12:16 and 23, and 15:23. Footnote 147, Leviticus 18:19 through 30, Leviticus 20:10 through 21, and Deuteronomy 22:13 through 30. Verse 30, now those who were sent came to Antiochia and gathered all the people, and they delivered the epistle. And after they read, they were encouraged and they rejoiced, and with an abundant word strengthened the brothers and established those of the household of Yehuda and Sheila, for they were also prophets. And after they were there a while, the brothers released them in peace to the shlichim. Verse 34 is non-existent in the Eastern Peshitta. Footnote 148, like the other omissions in the Peshitta, 1534 is also lacking in early Greek witnesses Aleph, A, and B manuscripts. Verse 35, now Paul and Barnabas remained in Antioch and were teaching and preaching the word of Elohim with many others. And after a few days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brothers in every city that we have preached the word of Elohim in it, and let us see what they are doing. Now Barnabas was desiring to take Yochanan, he who was called Marcus. Now Paul did not desire to take with him, because he did leave them while they were in Pamphylia, and he did not go with them. Because of this dispute, they separated from one the other, and Barnabas took Marcus and traveled by sea, and they went to Cupros. Paul now chose Sheila and departed while being entrusted by the brothers to the grace of Elohim. Footnote 149, conjugation difference between Tibota in 1905 and Tibote in Kaburas is worth noting as an example of differences that have no impact on the meaning of the verse. Verse 41, and he was traveling in Syria and in Cilicia and establishing assemblies. Footnote 150, at this point, Paul Yunan's notes cease, so I trust that the notes preserved thus far speak volumes to Paul Yunan's Aramaic expertise and scholarship.
What is so remarkable, in fact, astounding, about the Mandelbrot set is that although it's infinitely complex, It's based on incredibly simple principles, unlike almost everything in modern mathematics. In fact, anybody who can add and multiply can understand the principles on which it's based. You don't even have to subtract or divide, still less use logarithms or trigonometrical functions to comprehend how the Mandelbrot set is created. In fact, in principle, it could have been discovered any time in human history and not merely in 1980. But the problem is this: although it's only based on adding and multiplying, you have to carry out those operations millions, billions of times to create a complete set. And that's why it was not discovered until the era of modern computers.
It was on the 1st of March, 1980, at IBM's Thomas J. Watson Research Center in upstate New York that Benoit Mandelbrot first glimpsed the M-set. The seeds of this discovery were, in fact, sown decades before the M-set was first seen. In Paris, in 1917, a mathematician called Gaston Julia published papers connected with so-called complex numbers. The results of his endeavors eventually became known as Julia sets, although Julia himself never saw a Julia set. He could only guess at them, and it wouldn't be until the advent of modern computers that Julia sets could be seen for the first time.
For me, the first step, almost in a difficult mathematical problem, was to program it and see how it looked like. We started programming Julia sets of all kinds. It was extraordinarily great fun. And in particular, at one point, we became interested in Julia set of the simplest possible transformation. Z goes to Z squared plus C. So Z times Z plus C. I made many pictures of it. First of all, the first one was very rough. But the very rough picture, that was not the answer. Each rough picture asked a question, so I made another picture, another picture, another picture. And after a few weeks, we had this very strong, overwhelming impression that this was a kind of big bear we have encountered. I think the most important implication is that from very simple formulas you can get very complicated results. It's fundamental from viewpoint of the very base of science, because what is science? We have all this mess around us, things are totally incomprehensible, and then eventually, more or less rapidly, more or less hard to achieve, we find simple laws, simple formulas. In a way, a very simple formula, Newton's law, which is just also a few symbols, can, by hard work, explain the motion of planets around the sun and many, many other things to the 15th decimal. It's marvelous. A very simple formula explains all these very complicated things.
There's an interesting parallel with the equation that almost everybody is familiar with, the only equation almost everybody is familiar with, E equals mc squared, Albert Einstein's equation that says matter and energy are equivalent to each other. That was a very simple equation with very far-reaching consequences. And the equation for the Mandelbrot set is equally simple. Z equals Z squared plus C.
The letters in the Mandelbrot equation stand for numbers, unlike those in Einstein's equation where they stand for physical quantities, mass, velocity, energy. The Mandelbrot numbers are coordinates, positions on the plane, defining the location of a spot. Another difference from Einstein's equation, and a very important one, is this double arrow. It's a kind of two-way traffic sign. The numbers flow in both directions, constantly feeding back on themselves. This process of going round and round a loop is called iteration. It's rather like a dog chasing its own tail. The output of one operation becomes the input of the other, and so on and on and on. When the Mandelbrot equation is given a number representing a point, and that number is iterated through the equation, one of two things happen. Either the number gets bigger and bigger and shoots off to infinity, or it shrinks to zero. Depending on which happens, the computer then knows where to draw a boundary line. So what we get from this basic iteration is a kind of map, dividing this world into two distinct territories. Outside of it are all the numbers that have the freedom of infinity, inside it, numbers that are prisoners, trapped and doomed to ultimate extinction. This mathematics offers new insights into the way the universe works, how much in life is determined, and how much is due to chance.
When Isaac Newton came up with laws of motion and laws of gravity, the picture that emerged was of a clockwork universe. It was of a machine that ticked on a predetermined course. All you needed to know was where it was now and what it was doing now, and then you could predict the future forever. And there are two challenges to this. One is quantum mechanics, which says, in fact, there is irreducible chance built into the very fabric of the universe. And you can't actually say exactly what it's doing now. You can't say exactly what it's doing ever. But the other is things that come out of the Mandelbrot set and related parts of mathematics, which is that even in a Newtonian world, in practice you may not be able to predict the future. It can be deterministic in principle, but not in practice.
This is how God created a system which gave us free will. It's the most brilliant maneuver in the universe, to create something in which everything is free. How could you do that?
Albert Einstein refused to accept the idea of a dice-playing deity. He wrote a letter to Max Born in which he said, "You believe in a God who plays dice, and I in complete law and order." So he obviously felt that chance and deterministic laws were not compatible, and he preferred the deterministic laws. Now, what the Mandelbrot set and chaos and related things have done for us is to show that you can have both at the same time. So it's not whether God plays dice that matters, it's how God plays dice.
For more information about these videos, look at the video description and click More. You can then have links to my YouTube channel and the YouTube playlist, which has all the Aramaic English New Testament videos, Bible Hub links, and Odiote. So this is useful because you can click a chapter and go word by word through the scriptures and get details about each word and where they are used throughout the Bible.